You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another controversial, just kidding, yet objective show here at Ask Drone U.
It should not be controversial. If it is, that's because people are approaching it with a very subjective mindset.
Confirmation bias is real.
Yes.
I mean, confirmation bias, remember, is so real that even when people say they have no confirmation bias, it actually states the opposite. That's why there's preferential difference, and I digress.
That's like saying, I'm finally humble.
Yikes, I did that a week ago. Uh-oh.
Oh, no, you can't ever do that. No. That's bad.
And it's dead.
That's bad. Yeah, I'm a pretty humble guy.
Yeah.
No. I'm joking. I did not say that. I did not say that.
So in today's show, we're going to be talking about Skydio feedback from the show that we did with Adam Bry. The comments have been very interesting on that show. And then
let's hit that quickly.
Let's hit it quickly, but then we're going to move right into the 2025 NDAA has been released. And while many people were claiming that there was no CCP drone ban in the article itself, Brendan Schulman, aka Drone Laws, who also used to be chief counsel for DJI, corrected all of these papers on Twitter and said, I recommend that you read the bill further because there is actually a significant and wider scoping ban than what the CCP bill had originally had in it. So let's hit the Skydio feedback first. Rob, what did you think of that show? I know.
What did I think?
Yeah, what did you think of the comments of that show? In fact, I'm going to pull some up right now.
Well, the comments were pretty much as expected. There's some people that are pissed that he was even on the show, whatever. Not going to be able to please those people ever unless you just go exactly along the party line or whatever you want to call it that they're on. So I don't worry about those folks. I think we lost some followers. Good riddance.
Actually,
honestly,
if you look at
we can't just have objective conversations, we're not for you anyways.
If you actually look at the follower count, it's up by 2.
No. It is, but I don't mean net loss. I just mean some people said, hey, I can't believe you did this. They're evil, so I'm unfollowing you. All right. Hasta la vista, baby, I guess is what I would say to that. I think that any interview can always be a little bit tougher, but I also think that there's... you definitely touched on some challenging subjects. You asked about the lobbying. As to whether one believes what he said, that's up to the viewer and the listener, right? I mean, I kind of see it as you're either going to give the benefit of the doubt, if not full belief. Option 3 is you call him a liar. That's up to you. I personally, if I would go to what I personally think of having listened to the show, don't think he's a liar. But I don't know him, right? So I don't want to speak to character per se because I don't have a relationship with him. But I'm not prepared to sit here and say he's lying, which a lot of people in comments I think are, if not saying, which I don't think people are bold enough to say that, but they allude to that. And, again, that's your prerogative. And I'm all about free speech and prerogatives being opportunistic, if you will. So, but I thought it was a good interview. I think some people have said that you were a little soft on him. I will say I thought it was a good interview. I could at least see why they said that, but so it's not unfair in some cases, but at the same time, some difficult subjects were addressed, and there you have it. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we did it.
I will say I'm glad that we did it too. There were some points that he brought up and things that I had honestly never thought about. He does bring up a really good point about how the Chinese have a massive handicap, meaning they have a massive advantage in the fact that they have been manufacturing parts like motors and batteries for decades longer than the Americans have. And it was really interesting how he said that he's not lobbying against DJI, that he is actually lobbying that the US government does more for the industry, meaning that they subsidize the transition, that they subsidize American manufacturing. And it's really interesting when people say like Ed Williams Tech say that drone use sold out long ago.
What does that even mean? Like, if you're going to say that, say like, what's the evidence of that?
You know, that's a very good point, and I agree with that. I also, I wonder, a lot of these comments are from people who have 9 subscribers.
That's the most I've seen.
I love it.
It's been more savage. Like 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm curious, so here's something to think about, and this is why I brought this up. Let me finish my point. Okay,
shut up. Sorry, go ahead.
Ed Williams says Adam Bry is the enemy of drone service providers. I think it's really important. I know where this comment is coming from, and it's coming from people like at the Drone Advocacy Alliance, where they're saying that any person, and Adam Bry even brought this up in the show, that any person who is pro-Skydio as China is retaliating against Skydio is not for drone service providers. Let me give you guys a history lesson. The same people who run that association have been dividing this industry since 2016. They originally said, oh, don't worry about the hobbyists. The commercial people will be fine. We'll be represented in Congress. We're more serious. We're more tactful. We're more rational. That did not work at all, ever, period, end of story. The division in this industry has caused us to have these further problems over and over and over again. And by saying that Skydio is a problem while the Chinese government is attacking them, an American company, you might as well say that if we were in a war with China, that you're on China's side. Because ultimately, if you advance your position a little bit further, that's what you are saying. And look, a drone ban does hurt us all. It would hurt Drone U too.
Significantly.
Yeah. So, I mean,
we'll figure it out.
We are not going to sit here and cry about it. We're not going to sit here and say, oh, there is no evidence of a security issue. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of documented cases of such. It's a fool's errand to say otherwise. And then to say, call your senators and congressmen and tell them you're against the ban and that there is no security problem. The comments aren't going to go anywhere, man. They're not going to go anywhere when you're gaslighting a politician who's getting intelligence reports about it on a daily basis. So
again, back to the quote.
Yeah.
Illusion of knowledge.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, and I challenge people too, because I've had to kind of circle the wagons and change my perspective on things as well. If you are saying that you are rooting for China against Skydio, you seriously are rooting for communism. You are rooting for people who have stolen IP and are now using it against us.
Yeah, but it helps me.
I feel like we need to do a Key and Peele skit, where he does like,
yeah, but my life depends on it. I love communism. No. I'm totally being facetious, but and I just can't stress this enough. We just talked to a major user of drones in the United States. Not going to even hint at who it is, and they have a very important role in the United States drone industry and what they do. Not the drone industry, but their purview of what their job is, and they need DJI drones.
Yeah, I think
right?
I think a lot of us need DJI drones.
Yeah, and we are not like saying, man, we're just trying to be objective, man.
No, and we have to have... So
that guy like that says we sold out. Screw you.
Yeah.
That pisses me off.
And what I will say is I think it's so important to understand that we have to have discovery on both sides. I mean, imagine if everyone in this industry banded together and said banning DJI is not an intelligent solution. We need to be a free market. Our free market has been leveraged against us by the Chinese, and we need to figure out ways and methodologies to counteract that. We need to talk about essentially banning them from internet, banning them from firmware updates, banning them from all these things, but you could still own the drones and use them, right? I mean, and that's something that kind of like that Adam Bry alluded to is like, we need a more intelligent response as a whole. We cannot just essentially say ban them, right? But at the same time, China has stolen a lot of our IP. Look at those fighter jets that they've copied that look just like an F-35. The nice thing is that people say that China doesn't have the chip capacity that the United States does. Well, they're just one invasion away from having that, number one. And number two is you look at DJI's drones and the chipsets that are used in those, and they seem to be working much better than other domestic options. So that being said, some of these comments of like, oh, you went too soft, drone use sold out. It's like, look, man, in many cases in history, the industry has completely changed. And AI is another fantastic example. The people that don't change with AI will end up in the self-fulfilling prophecy of literally being left for dead. You will fall off the cliff. The cliff will come. It's not if, it's when. Whereas you could simply be open to learning about AI, augmenting your position with AI, and then you're not left behind. I see the same thing happening with domestic versus Chinese drones. And I think it's really important to understand that when you actually look at the maturity of the industry, we are still so young. And that's something that Adam brought up. And I was like, you know what? Actually, as you say that, that is really apropos right now. It's absolutely apropos. Just like, the first cars had come out in like the 1800s, but it was the first mass-produced car that started changing things for the way that we designed our cities, the way that we designed our roads. And that was what, 1912? Was that Model T? I can't remember. Anyway, there were cars that Mercedes had built in the 1800s prior to that. And it took like 20 years for them to actually create a manufacturing system to build up the domestic manufacturing of domestic vehicles. So I do think that we are very young and very mature. No, I do not want a drone ban, but I also don't believe that, I believe that competition is good for everyone, but when people have rigged the game to not allow competition to completely compete in any given way, then things do need to be changed to right the ship. Otherwise, we will literally screw ourselves over.
So that last comment that you made, when things have been rigged, are you suggesting that's happened?
Yeah, with DJI Sentinel program, it's actually absolutely been rigged. They've literally been using sentiment analysis with data capture from your phone, from like when you were using your phone to control these drones, to the new smart controller. They are literally having the fastest feedback loop in the history of consumer electronics because they're listening to everything that you're saying, making changes for it, and then also going into these social media groups. They literally have an entire document about how they've infiltrated the Facebook groups to be pro DJI, and it makes sense because if you look what happened to
What else
Unique.
do we expect from these people, man?
Exactly. And when you're a photographer saying that you're a professional in security and you can't comprehend the things that they've literally done, you shouldn't have a voice in the industry, and that's already being squashed. So
okay, so that being yikes. One of the arguments, and I'm sure we've addressed this before, but this damn subject keeps coming up, is one of the arguments is, but that's Meta does the same thing, and Google's doing the same thing, and now Palantir's doing the same thing, and on and on and on. Why do we care?
The difference is twofold. One, and that I saw that comment on X.
Oh, it's been a comment for months, if not.
The difference is, and this is why these people are not security experts, is that you agreed with Facebook listening to you. You agreed to Instagram listening to you. If you didn't read, and I don't feel...
But a lot of people would say, I didn't agree. They just, that was the default.
And that's okay. Look at the vaccination with COVID. No one read page 53 of the emergency authorization, which negated every claim on TV. And it only was just this last week that the US government put out that, all those conspiracy theories were actually correct. So what you're saying is the argument is I agreed to that stuff because I was too lazy to read the fine print, right? And so it goes back to your quote.
But who does? 1 out of 1 billion people reads that fine print. But be that as it may, your point is still true.
It is, unfortunately. Now, with the drones and everything, this has been more of a clandestine operation, which again, I want to be able to fly a DJI. I love flying DJI. They're so much fun. Yes, they're cheap, and yes, they're easy. But I've been starting to think, Rob, and maybe I'll get slack for this, but I'm starting to think that the thinning out of this industry might not be a bad thing.
It'll happen one way or the other.
And that's true
every
as well.
Every industry goes through it, and I think it's already happened to some extent. But I don't want this to be the way it happens, to be honest with you.
I agree. I totally agree.
I want it to be based on merit and based on performance, and deliverables, capabilities, those kinds of things, not because I don't have enough money to buy the drone that I have to be a drone service provider.
Well, and there is already a division happening because on November 12th, the DoD, NASA, and GSA came out with a new bill that essentially says if you're doing any work for any institution that gets any federal money whatsoever, you cannot fly DJI. And we have been training a lot of enterprise groups and guys that have been consumer and are now enterprise that are getting these contracts at the state level, all the SLED contracts, and they are getting paid way more money to fly domestic aircraft. And you think about the old days, if you worked in logistics, if you worked in trucking, you had to spend $60,000 to $100,000 to go open a business, to go be able to make money. And drones are kind of moving up into that. You don't have to spend 60. You could spend 20 with Skydio. You could spend 30 with FreeFly. You could spend 15 or 20 with Inspired Flight. You could go with Teal. I mean,
but it's still hard to swallow when you can spend 5 with DJI.
Well, and I think the good analogy is it's like the automotive industry. Imagine that you could buy a brand new Lexus with the reliability, the way that it drives for $2,000. But if you wanted the same thing from an American company, it would be like a Chevy Cruze and it would be like $40,000, right? I mean, that's honestly the analogy is if you flip-flop the situation.
Yeah. No, okay. I'm not completely sure of the relevance because we're talking about China. So the next question becomes, what is the solution other than a ban? And I think Kevin, and I apologize, I never know if it's Finisterre. There a recent post that he made on X. I hope it's okay me bringing this up. I guess it's public, so why wouldn't it be?
Yep.
But he lays out, have you read that?
What he actually should be done.
He's like, okay, for the billionth time, here's the solution. No, don't bring, we don't need to bring that why.
Okay.
He just laid out the solution because everybody asked, well, then what do we do? And I think he's answering that question. I think what's hard for people is that solution is more complex and difficult than people want it to be.
Or there's definitely...
Or expensive, etc.
Well, there's definitely a level of innate impetuousness as well. You are seeing people that love DJI so much that they are literally incapable of being objective. They're incapable of really listening to, okay, what would the solution actually be for us to keep flying DJI? And it's like, it's so hard to fathom that they would rather have the alternate of the ban. Like, that's honestly the dichotomy. The very people...
The decision makers?
No. The pilots who are whining, the pilots who are complaining, the people in other drone companies who are saying, okay, what's the solution, right? But they're not actually reading the solution. They're not actually, advocating for the solution. They're not considering what the solution would really take to implement. It's these people who are incapable of understanding the complexities to get this implemented. And yet, because they're lazy and incapable of being open-minded, they're subconsciously voting for the ban rather than advocating for the industry to put these things into the software. Like, my point is like the people who are asking, okay, what's the solution? We should take that solution and go to DJI and say, why aren't you making these changes right now? So that way there doesn't have to be a DJI ban. Right?
So let me try to interpret what you just said. The lazy thinking is effectively, inherently, a DJI ban vote.
Yes.
Because you're not giving a better alternative.
Because not only are you not listening to the better alternative, but you're not advocating for DJI to implement the alternative.
You're simply trying to gaslight. By the way, I have a theory on that, and that is we have all been gaslit for decades now from a marketing standpoint, from a political standpoint, that it's almost like it's part of our DNA to project that in our own efforts.
Well, yeah.
And so it's like, well, of course we're going to try to gaslight. That's like the world we live in.
It's just not an effective strategy.
Of course not. But it's inherent in kind of societal norms now to try to gaslight.
Especially if you watch mainstream media for a vast majority of your life, 100%.
That's a perfect example because they still try to do it, even though they're like,
and yet
losing viewers by the millions.
I was going to say, meanwhile, MSNBC is being sold off. Anyway.
Yeah, that's another subject. But I think it proves the point. But I don't know.
But do you see my point that by like, okay,
I think I just tried to like summarize your point in about 10 words or less.
100%. I agree that you're correct. And that's what I've been trying to get out is like, guys, we can't gaslight people. It's just like when last year when we were advocating, hey, how come the data sync is still live when that's the methodology that DJI is using to take your data from you? And then right before the 2024 NDAA, oh, we deleted data sync. We deleted data sync and people are still saying, oh, there was no way that was leaking data. It's like, guys, the intelligence community documented literally hundreds of times that it was used to literally leak data.
I'm fascinated too by the fact, let's just be real, that there's so many people because of their subjective perspective on an issue are ignoring everything else that we know about this country.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. It literally blows my mind. Like, come on. Let's at least be intellectually honest about what's possible, if not happening.
It just goes to prove Dale Carnegie, and it also goes to prove, I almost said the wrong name, Chris Voss. Chris Voss have said that all decisions are 99% dependent upon emotion. And as soon as you can break that mold, you see the world in a very different light.
So yes, 100%. So to what we're talking about, what would the potential power be behind everybody sort of getting on the same page about the reality of where we're at with the drone industry and DJI and how to solve it?
I think the reality would be very different. If we got most of the drone community to work with their congressmen and senators and say, we know this is the problem, this is a potential solution, instead of banning these things, let's implement X, Y, and Z so that we don't screw over $100 billion industry while also trying to prop up the domestic industry. I think it's absolutely vital to our national security that we do prop up the domestic industry. We need to be pouring billions of dollars to subsidize domestic drone manufacturing. End of story. Am I surprised that we're at this chasm? No, I'm not. Look at again, the Wright brothers. Okay. They say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Bullshit. It happened all over again in the same exact way. So that said, meaning Wright brothers invented aviation.
I think the history does repeat itself.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
So that being said, I think if all the drone people were to get together, listen to security experts, force DJI to make these changes, there would be no DJI ban. And ultimately, a lot of people are listening to people with no security knowledge whatsoever, trying to pretend like they know what they're talking about when they don't. And it's ultimately going to lead us to a ban.
Which is you're reiterating the point you made 5 minutes ago. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I get it.
Okay, so let's talk about 2025. Here we are. The NDAA is out. And there were drone magazines and online bloggers saying, there's no Chinese ban, we're in the clear. And then Brendan Schulman's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then Miriam from Drone Life posts this amazing article saying, you might not have seen the CCP language, but you saw very similar critical language. Go ahead and just read it, Rob.
I don't think we need to read it because it's reiterating what was already in the old bill. Effectively, with some additional.
I think it's an expanded scope. So a lot of people are saying, okay, the new NDAA does not include the CCP ban bill in it, but there's Section 1709. Section 1709 mandates that within 1 year of the NDAA's enactment, a designated national security agency must determine whether certain communications and surveillance equipment pose an unacceptable risk to U.S. national security or the safety of American citizens. The equipment is subject to
the equipment that is subject to evaluation includes
DJI technologies, Autel, equipment or services provided by any subsidiaries, affiliates, or partners with these companies. That includes Onzu or entities engaged in joint ventures, licensing, technology sharing agreements with these companies. That's Onzu.
Yep.
Okay. Here's the big deal, right? So if the agency identifies a security risk, the FCC must add equipment or services to its covered list within 30 days. Once listed, these products would be prohibited from using FCC-regulated bandwidth, effectively barring their operation within U.S. communications networks. That is a much larger ban than the original CCP ban, okay?
Well, probably even worse. is this section right here.
Now, so if the intelligence community doesn't actually act on this within a year, and I quote, if no determination is made within 1 year, the legislation requires that all specified equipment and services be automatically added to the covered list. The provision further calls for detailed reports to Congress from the relevant national security agencies, ensuring transparency in these decision-making process. So that essentially means even if they don't make a security call within a year, your drones are banned. End of story.
If this passes.
Yes.
Right. So again, we have to say that over and because how many iterations of this have we been going through? Like acting like it's already done.
I think 5.
And we get all worked up and blah, blah, blah. And eventually there might be something that we have to actually be worked up about in terms of effects of legislation. But yeah, this is pretty intense. This is the way I posed it to you was this is kind of a guilty until proven innocent situation.
I think it's very apropos again. And I think people need to understand why is the government so hardcore about this? One, we have no domestic manufacturing for mission critical parts for the most valuable weapon of war in the modern century. Okay, that's number one. Number two, China has cheated for the last 20 years.
More than that.
Agreed. And we need to essentially tip the scales back in our favor in order to maintain technology dominance, like what Google, Apple, etc. have done. And lastly, they need to make sure that our assets are not being clandestinely mapped in an effort to essentially, subjugate? I don't know if that's the right word. To essentially plan a hurting of our national system. I don't think people understand how vulnerable our power grid, for example, is. There's, and I'm not even going to say the number, there's numerous weak points in our system that could hurt everyone in a matter of seconds. That's why they don't want DJI drones flying around critical infrastructure, because the data has been leaked. I mean, there was a story when we were in Albuquerque. I had a captain in the Air Force. They were testing their counter drone system, flying Phantoms out in the Manzano Mountains, and they lost one. And they called DJI. This was 2017. They called DJI and they said, we need help locating our drone. DJI emailed them all the videos and all the photos of all the assets that they had been taking pictures of. And the US Air Force was like, how the hell did you get that data? Guess what? It's called DJI's Sentinel program. And now you're seeing a first real world example of the real dangers of these drones. Because a lot of people are saying, I don't care about national security. I want to fly my drone. It's like, okay, well...
if you're saying that, you don't mean it. Yeah, you don't mean it.
That means you're ready for the Chinese to take over our country, put you in a jail, like what happened in World War II. Is that really what you want? Like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's the stark reality. I don't want it either. I don't want to ban DJI either. I would expect our Congress and government to come up with more intellectual methodologies of solving this problem.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. I just want to say this, like, don't underestimate the Chinese. Just don't underestimate them. If you look into the things they're doing all around the world in terms of, for example, buying ports, controlling more and more ports to control.
My dad warned us about that in 2007.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
So no, I mean, that's really it. I don't need to go, all soapboxy on that. I think the bottom line is I'm just going to try to be succinct here. We love DJI. We don't want them going anywhere. We know so many people rely on them. So many really important organizations rely on them. So how do we figure out how to not have the ban happen and still have a Skydio, a Free-Fly, an Inspired Flight have success?
And we want all those companies to have
Absolutely.
success. We really do. There are, when we mentioned the Skydio story with the group that you talked about earlier, they were like, I really don't like Skydio. I don't like that they're charging us subscription fees for software. They're trying to treat a hardware company like a software company, and no one likes that. He's like, look, are we saving lives? Yeah, sure, we are. But at what expense? We are burning taxpayer dollars at a rate we've never burned before. And that would have been such a good question. Like, I'd like to do another show with Adam and bring up some of these other questions because, even some of the comments on the video of like, I just feel like they don't care about consumers. And that's an emotional question. I agree. I want them to give us better consumer drone options as well. But the money's not in consumer drones because it's saturated. The money is in enterprise solutions. And when you're also having the US government, the largest company in the United States saying, if you want to work with us, you fly American. Guess what? All the serious drone pilots are already moving there. The high paying jobs are already going there. You have to think about this in a more emotionally intelligent methodology, which is, holy shit, if the ban does happen, what do I need to do right now? How can I plan right now to make sure that my company doesn't just survive, but thrives?
Yeah.
Or do I need to be saving, changing the jobs, evolving my deliverables, thinking about better accuracies, working as a project engineer, getting my project engineer certificate, being better at flying in situations where they just can't hire the competition because they can't get it, right? I mean, you've got to be thinking in these ways. And honestly, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, though. It's still hard to swallow. Yeah, that all sounds great, but asking me to spend $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 on a drone platform is a big ask, and it may be an ask that you just can't get around. I do think the point of they don't care about the small drone service providers. Maybe you're right, but I also would say there is a difference between whether or not they care versus this is a business decision.
Bingo.
Right? And at least think about that, like pulling back again into an objective space.
Well, even if they don't care, what does it matter? What, like, okay, they don't care. What does it matter?
Right.
What is that going to do?
Well, and ultimately in a capitalistic society, at least in theory, it'll play out. Like either they'll be able to get the business and they'll be able to get the contracts or not. I think I'll say this, if they are truly lobbying diligently to have a ban occur, that's not cool. Depending upon even what those reasons, is it truly because of security? So I just kind of want to understand where people are coming from, and you know, we say get the emotion out of it. That's not realistic. I mean, emotion is part of life and part of who we are. But in terms of do they care about the drone service provider, I don't think that's even the right question.
I agree. That was my point of like, what does it matter? Like what does it do? And I think if people want an effective strategy to kind of change and pivot, they need to stop listening to people on Facebook and they need to start advocating for DJI to make the changes security-wise that the US government wants to see. Now, the thing that we haven't talked about yet is all of this could be null and void because of a very important case going in front of the Supreme Court.
With TikTok and could that spill over?
So essentially, many people have been saying, well, it's going to be interesting to see what the Trump administration does with this because the TikTok ban has could be overturned. Trump has even said himself that he doesn't think that we should outlaw TikTok, that we should find a better way to handle this situation, which, you know what, Trump, fantastic. I agree. Great job. Best argument ever. Anyway.
There's so much irony in this that's just hitting me across the head right now with respect to how I'm not even going to get into it at this moment. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear the end of that. I want to hear the end of that.
Well, my suspicion is that a lot of folks that would be upset about this, that if the ban of TikTok doesn't go through, a lot of the people that would be upset about that potentially are the same people that don't want DJI Ban because it affects them personally.
Interesting. Yeah.
I know there's people like that out there.
100%. Well, so what are we talking about?
Objectivity.
TikTok is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in on pausing the ban against TikTok. This could be essentially the red herring in the DJI case, because if the Supreme Court comes down and says you can't ban a company based off of the creator's origin or location of origin, that could significantly change the dichotomy in the DJI ban itself. Which I will say, I think that there is a topic that we need to discuss here on the show, and we need to be very careful about it. But how many drone pilots are out there flying drones as a solution for therapy? And I mean that seriously, because I fly drones for therapy myself. Okay,
I'm definitely not going to buy a $30,000 drone for that.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. Okay. And so, I asked the question of like, how many people are just flying drones for therapy? And are those the same cohort of people that are just lambasting all of the domestic manufacturers?
I don't think they are.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought I'd bring it up.
It doesn't hurt to bring up the point.
I thought I'd bring it up because I know a lot of people, myself included, do fly for therapeutic reasons. It's a great way to clear your head.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just brought that up.
TikTok, Supreme Court. What are we talking about here?
TikTok, Supreme Court. I think you should read part of this article that makes the most sense. But long story short, it's my understanding that the Supreme Court will have an opportunity with the appellate jurisdiction over this action to decide whether to review the exceptionally important case of TikTok versus the United States. So when you read what's here on CNBC, what are you seeing?
Well, they're just talking about this particular article is talking about how many content creators effectively would be impacted, and it'd be over $1 billion lost in a month in terms of revenue. I don't want to necessarily get into the TikTok case right now unless there's a direct correlation to what could happen with the DJI ban. So what is that correlation specifically, other than they're both Chinese-based companies?
Well, because if they ban TikTok, then I think that it would be easy to say that there's very legal recourse for DJI to stop.
If they do ban TikTok?
If they ban TikTok, there will be no legal recourse for DJI to delay or pause a potential ban against them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I guess we will see as well. I think it's going to be really interesting because if the TikTok ban does not go through, the Supreme Court steps in for whatever reason, then I think okay, let me say that again.
But I think you just said for whatever reason. I think that reason would be very, very important to the DJI situation.
Couldn't agree more. Okay. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And to clarify, what I was going to say is if TikTok ban goes through, DJI ban is most likely going to go through as well. If Supreme Court says, no, we're not banning TikTok, then chances are there will not be a DJI ban, and this hopefully will be the very last show or thing that you hear about a DJI ban. So
wouldn't that be amazing?
Yes, but it's doubtful.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah. It is very doubtful, unfortunately.
The long and the short of it is, if you are a smart business person, you really should stay on the sidelines, prepare your business for a pivot, whether it's going to happen or not. Because you're either going, like with all technology, you're either going to change with the times or be left behind. It is honestly your choice. I do not like that dichotomy. I don't even like saying that. But ultimately, the reality is painfully simple, and the historical precedence showcases that you change with the times or get left behind.
There you go, selling out again.
I'm selling out. I'm selling out to reality of selling. I'm selling out to realizing that if I don't pivot, I'll be left behind too.
Yeah.
That's the harsh reality. I've been slapped in the face with reality.
Yeah. Anyways, I hope this has been beneficial in some way.
If not entertaining.
Honestly, I'm going to be really honest here. I don't normally read the comments to YouTube. I did read them, and I have been reading them for the interview with Adam. And then I'll read them for this because I really want to know what people think and what are we not thinking about? And if you're going to say we're selling out, could you be specific how? Because I don't think we're sellouts. And so maybe there's something that we could course correct there. But our business for 11 years now has been about helping the drone service providers have success. And that's not going to stop. But we also have the ability, and therefore do, help the enterprise customers as well. Like, it's not a mutually exclusive world when it comes to that, at least as far as we're concerned. So we're going to continue doing that. But let us know, seriously, I want to know your thoughts. And I'm not afraid to hear, I can't believe you said that. That was wrong. Here's why. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I hope it's beneficial, though.
We appreciate you listening. We appreciate your feedback. Again, to just say it one more time. Look, we don't want a DJI ban. We love flying them as much as you do. But we are in a weird predicament, and we're in a weird predicament because of the talking heads in this industry really not knowing what they're talking about. And we can change this, but we have to stop listening and start looking at source material. One of the things that my dad taught me very, very early is he goes, you do not listen to any pundit regarding any legal case whatsoever. You read the source material and come up with your own solution, because 9 out of 10 times you're going to find out that you're going to come to a very different conclusion than what most of the media is saying and most pundits are saying. This is true here too. So for all of you that keep listening to us, for the whatever 5 million downloads that we got in, on Apple and Spotify and all that. We appreciate you. We really do. I know our YouTube numbers are a different story because a lot of people just listen. They don't watch. I don't blame them. If I saw a bald guy and a balding guy, I probably wouldn't want to watch it either. So there it is. Anyway, anyway, that is going to do it for us. And if you do have comments on this, don't be afraid to go to askdroneu.com and upload some of them. We would love to discuss this. I think it's important to have that feedback loop and have candor and talk about the different perspectives of this. So
absolutely.
Let us know. Thanks again for listening. This is Ask Drone U.